good to see you again.
Good evening, Olumide. It's man-to-man tonight.
Yes, it is. And I see you have a Lego set to, to give a pictorial representation of what you're going to be saying. It's one of the demands of or it's been mentioned amongst the demands of the other protesters, police reform, remuneration and welfare for the police. Do you see that this budget, when compared to other ministries, departments and agencies, is good news?
There's good news and there's bad news. Depends on what side of the negotiation table you're sitting on. And I'll let you determine what is good and bad news. But tonight, I'd like to talk about three things. The first is the funding for the police. Then I'll talk about how much currency does the government still have. And finally, we'll talk about the facts, unseen facts about what happened with SARS this week. But speaking about the budget of the police and the salaries of police officers, there's a company, Lego, that produces toys. Last year, they are just about 20,000 employees, $1 billion. $1 billion this toy company paid its employees. The Nigerian police force last year, over 300,000 employees. The salaries wasn't up to $1 billion. In other words, Olumide, listen carefully. When the company or when the man that produces toys earns more than the man that protects lives, then things have gone out of control. What fella called Bafuka. And so, regarding the police, by no stretch of the imagination am I saying that the only reform that is required for the police is salaries. But what I'm saying is salaries is an important variable in reforming the police. The second question is, should the Inspector General of Police, Mohammed Adamu, be blamed? The Constitution has the answer. The Constitution says no. The Constitution talks about the Nigerian police will be funded by the federal government. The federal government gets most of its funding from the federation account. In other words, when we don't have money in the federation account, the federal government will not have money, and thus the Nigerian police will also not have sufficient funds. What I mean is, today, the tax you and I pay goes to the state. It doesn't go to the federal government. So we have a Nigerian police that is not funded by you and I. We have a Nigerian police that is funded by the federal government. And the states that we pay our personal taxes to don't have a police. And so if I were to be joining the protest, here's what I will carry. Here's what my protest will be. What was said more than 7 centuries ago by the Piper of Hamelin.
Yeah.
He who pays the piper
dictates the tune.
And that is the situation we have today.
From the proposed budget, what's the outlook for policing for the next 12 months?
It depends. We could quickly, first of all, take a look at how much we have in the budget of the Ministry of Police, the 455 billion budget. We see a lot of that money going into salaries, over 300 billion naira going into salaries, but we don't see a lot of money going into research and development. We have a research and development budget of only 33 million naira for the Nigerian police. Even I spend more than 33 million naira doing research and development per annum. But even though you see billions and billions of naira, I need to talk about the main problem. Because if we don't understand the problem, we wouldn't be able to really develop the reforms for the solution. Here's the main problem. Florida. The governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, just proposed a budget of $91 billion. Olumide, I used Florida because the population of Florida in the United States is similar to the population of Lagos. 20 million people living in Florida, a proposed budget of $91 billion. Within the budget of Florida, there's just one line item. Yeah, there are several line items, but the question is, in Florida, the budget for health, just one item in that budget, is $38 billion. Just one item, $38 billion. The budget of Nigeria, all ministries, the national budget, is only $34 billion. In other words, so Florida's health budget of $38 billion is more than Nigeria's national budget of $34 billion. And so it's important we have reforms, but it is even more important for us to reform our revenue. Because if there isn't sufficient revenue, that important factor, we will always be discussing it.
Some will say that's not a fair comparison, comparing Lego, which is a private concern in a capitalist society, to a police outfit funded by the federal government, not the state of Florida. But I'm thinking about the Police Trust Fund, and I'm thinking also the welfare of the police, the living quarters of the police. People talk about the barracks, it's not up to par, their salaries, the benchmark salaries, not up to par. How can funding for the police be improved?
When we talk about the private and capital society, we want the best in our police force. That's the point. We want the best in our police force. And if you don't pay the best for your police force, you will get monkeys. You pay peanuts, you will get monkeys. So that is the challenge. We need to really focus on the revenue and understand that the police isn't a revenue generating agency. But let's look at what happened with the SARS protest this week, because you talked about the outlook. And if you look at what has happened online, between Monday and Saturday, we've seen 54.6 million mentions of the word end SARS. And if you take a look, we see most of these mentions came up on Friday and Saturday. So as at Monday, we had only 4 million mentions. There was a decline on online mentions of the word end SARS by Tuesday to 2 million. And we see a lot of those mentions coming in at the weekend. So coming in as we've started this new week, we'll be looking at and focusing on, will these online mentions continue, or will we see a decline on those online mentions? Again, depending on which side of the table you are, you will want either the online mentions to keep continuing, or you want to see
We've run out of time, but I just want to say that, does it bother you that the police themselves, are they complaining that they're not well paid?
Oh, yes, they are.
The protesters are speaking up for them. Some of the protesters are speaking up for the police. So, but we'll leave it there.
We'll leave it there, but whatever we do, let's make sure that the cure for this is not worse than the disease.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Babajide Ogunso is a consultant for data for Channels Television.